Not one, not two. It's the show where you told you're not you. It's nothing in the middle, nothing in the middle, nothing in the middle, nothing in the middle of nothing. Hi, I'm Joey Lott, and welcome to the third episode of Nothing in the Middle. I've got your questions that I'm going to be addressing today, and so let's go ahead and get started. The first one, there are quite a few long ones today. So the first one says, being a recent fan of an uncompromising British non-duality teacher, which refers to Tony Parsons in this case, I would like to know who is doing the processes and investigations into disturbing thoughts and uncomfortable sensations that Joey Lott recommends. Tony says there's no one there to let go or to rest or to welcome anything, and people who say these things are just reinforcing the concepts of there being a separate person who has free will and choice and who can actually do something. Okay, so first part is you'd like to know who is doing the processes and investigations. And so we could address that a couple of different ways. I mean, one way to look at it is that as so long as there's some sense that you refers to something or someone, then that is who is doing the processes or the investigations. On the other hand, once the investigation is done, then it may be clear that no one is doing anything. So you can investigate that right now. You can just take a look and see, for example, who is listening or who is watching this video right now. There's clearly listening and or watching going on. And because there's something apparently happening, we assume or we infer that there must be someone who is doing it or to whom it is happening. There's some point of reference that's imagined. So the possibility is to take a look and see if you can find that point of reference. Now, of course, you can't. But you can't take the shortcut and say that you know the right answer, because knowing obviously doesn't do any good. No understanding, no knowledge, no concept will do any good other than just as a knowledge or concept or understanding. But if what you are desirous of is freedom, then the possibility is just to see if there's anything that is not free already. So you take a look and see, who is it that experiences? Who is it that is bound? Who is not free? Who is seeking? We could say that seeking is happening, but nobody is seeking. So seeking is not even a problem. It couldn't be. It's impossible that there could be a problem. It's just that it's imagined that there's a problem. It's imagined that there is somebody who has the problem and somebody who needs to do something about it. So as long as it seems that way, then that one who believes that it exists or that it is the doer or the chooser can choose to see if there's anything there. Is somebody doing? Is somebody watching? Is somebody listening? Is there a point of reference? So it's possible, of course, to, like I've already said, to try and gather an understanding or knowledge. So we can read all the books and attend the meetings and watch the videos and think that we have understood. But of course, you will not have understood. There's nothing to understand. That's really essentially the point, is that there's no possibility of understanding. There's only what is. And so it's a really big clue when you think that you understand that you don't. And then the opportunity is just to let go. To stop trying to understand. Or to look to see who it is that's trying to understand. It's the same thing. Either way, there's seemingly a release from the compulsive searching for some kind of foundation or some kind of ground, some end, some kind of finality, then it's discovered that there's only this, only ever just this. There's nothing hidden. So hopefully I've addressed that one. Let's take a look at what the next question is. So this isn't really a question, it's a comment, but I thought it would be useful to address it anyway. So this is, I have been listening to your videos on YouTube. If you let me, I would like to share my feedback. It seems to me that each video points to the same thing. However, as you add new video, more concepts come up. I went over all of your videos and still I have not got it. There's a thirst. What if the next new video will bring me what I have been looking for several years? And this can go on forever. I think that many people are or will be in the same shoes. So I think that's a great comment, because it really gets to the heart of the matter, which is that there's nothing to be gotten. Nothing at all. That is the discovery, that there's nothing to be had. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to do it. Nothing, no requirements, no needs. Everything happens. Everything, if we're to even imagine that there's something happening, even if we're to imagine that there's any possibility of understanding it, which there's not, it becomes obvious that it all takes care of itself. Always has, always will. And so the idea that there's something to understand, something to get, somewhere to arrive at, some kind of destination, is the trap. That is suffering. That's what keeps us going, searching for something more, something better, something other than this. Because we believe, mistakenly, that there is something other than this. We think there's something hidden. If we're going to get it, then it has to be something that isn't obvious. And if we're going to get it, it has to be something separate. It has to be something that's not obvious, separate, and distant. But the conflict is that in direct experience, what is obvious is that there is no separation, there is no distance. There's nothing to be had, there's nothing hidden. It's just this. So, hopefully I've addressed that one. This is the next question. If the world rises with me, alright, right, this is a long one, so we'll take it in pieces. If the world rises with me, the world of vision, of hearing, of the senses, then seeing and seen go always together? Question mark. So we'll take a look at that part first. So if the world rises with me, there's a presumption, right? There are quite a few presumptions that there's a world, there's a me, and there's rising. So I would always suggest you just take a look and see if it's true. Is there a world? Is there a me? Is there rising? Now, of course, conceptually, you can answer yes to anything. I mean, you could imagine anything is the case. Anything is possible, certainly. But if the world rises with me, why? Why assume that? So you take a look. Is there some separation? Is there a separate world and a separate me? Can you find the boundary? Can you find where that division exists? Where there's a separation between me and the world? Can you find the rising of the world? And apparently the rising of me. Can you find that rising taking place? If there's rising, then rising from where to where? In what? The whole notion, there's a construct there that assumes that there's some kind of boundaries, so that there's a definition possible. But if you start to take a look, you see that there is no definition. There's no end, there's no beginning to any of it. You can't say where the world, whatever that is, begins and ends. So if you can't find the beginning and the ending, if you can't find the boundaries for it, how can you say that it exists? At least how can you say that it exists as a thing, as something separate? And if it doesn't exist as a thing or as something separate, then it's impossible for us to actually speak meaningfully about it. So then the next part, the world of vision, of hearing, of the senses. Then seeing and seen go always together. So that's an interesting point. The seeing and seen go always together. And it's interesting because in one sense it's true. Seeing and seeing go together because there's no separation. It's an artificial distinction. You can test this out right now. You just see, is it possible to separate seen and seeing? What you believe you are that the object of seeing and the seeing itself. So you can see that at least, let's put it this way, that the supposed object of seeing cannot possibly be separate from seeing. It's impossible. It's just it becomes totally ridiculous to even speak of, because that presumes that there's some kind of occultism, like that there's some kind of objective reality out there that can be hidden, as if it was possible for there to be seen, the object of seeing without the seeing itself. So it can't be separate. It's the same. But what's interesting about it is that we speak about them as if there's some kind of reconciliation to take place, like, oh, seeing and the object of seeing are one. No, it's not true. There never was a separation. There is no object of seeing. It's totally artificial, that division. So, I mean, I'll just add to that the invitation is also, what's not stated in here, to take a look and see if there's a seer. Normally that's just implicit. I'm the one seeing. I am the seer. But you just take a look. Is that true? Is there actually a seer? Is there any division there? Is there someone who sees? And it may become evident that there's nobody who is seeing. There's just seeing. There's nobody who sees. There's no object of seeing. There's just seeing. And you can say that seeing is one flavor of reality as it is. So seeing, experiencing, thinking, feeling, doing, hearing, tasting, smelling, all of that. It's just different flavors of reality, which can't be separated. There's no really meaningful way to distinguish between any of those. So then, what of the blind man? What indeed? Where is his vision of the world? I would say if he's blind, he has none. Is there a seeing beyond the physical senses? So I don't really like to if I can avoid it, I don't like to entertain too many of these highly theoretical sorts of things. Like, I don't know. I'm not a blind man, so I don't know what of the blind man. I mean, I think you'd have to ask the blind man, to be honest. But if I was to address this, which I guess I will, I would just say that, as we've already seen, seeing is all that's happening. So the distinction, I mean, to say that there's a blind person, like I said, I'm not blind, so I don't know, but I'm assuming that reality is. So seeing may be theoretically possible to. I mean, we can go off into philosophy and debate whether there's a difference between the seeing of the blind and the seeing of the sighted. I mean, apparently so, but it's seeing. It's just seeing. So is there a seeing beyond the physical senses? Well, no. but it's just it's an artificial distinction. I mean, it's conceptual, really, to say the physical senses. The only way that you can, the physical senses are they don't exist. The physical senses it's like a reification of the actuality of just the seeing. It's the same as the seer. The seer is a reification, but there's no seer, and there's no senses. There's only sensing, which is seeing. So there's no seeing beyond senses. There are no senses. Does the world exist only because I exist in this physical body? There's a lot of assumptions there. So, does the world exist? I would say no. It does. And does it exist only because I exist in this physical body? So, I exist in this physical body is actually not observably true. So, you just check that out. Do I exist in the physical body? It's a conceptual construct, but it's not. It doesn't test out in actual experience. If you drop the concept, there's no possibility of I existing in a physical body. There's just what is. There's no object, no subject, no distance, no space, no time. It's just this. Totally non-conceptual. That's reality. It doesn't require anything, any concept. It doesn't require any belief. It doesn't require any kind of anything. It just is. But not it is out there. It just is. There's nobody who is observing it. So you take a look and see for yourself right now. You can see that that is true, or you can at least see that there's no evidence whatsoever that there is anyone who is existing in a physical body, or any evidence whatsoever of any kind of space. Upon the extinction of this body, does the world also extinguish? I'm just going to keep. I think we've covered most of this. Does pure consciousness sense? No, there's no such thing as pure consciousness. It's just another artificial construct. It's conceptual. There's no boundaries to be found. There's no thing. That's always the test. You just always test to see, is there actually such a thing? And if you want to know if it's how to know if there's such a thing, you should actually be able to find the boundaries of it. If you want to know, does a pencil exist, then it only exists if you can find the boundaries of it. Otherwise, there's no such thing. So, world, consciousness, pure consciousness, awareness, self, being, if we're going to talk about being as an object, which is often done, you just test to see if they actually exist, and they don't. So I'm just going to look to see if any of the rest of these are different. If sunlight is the nature of the sun, what is our nature? Our nature is, there is no one to have a nature. There's just what is. Our function is to procreate and play the game, but are we the mule or its rider? It's all very poetic. It's quite nice. Our function is to procreate. There's no one who has a function. There's just functioning. So that's simple. And to speculate about what the purpose of the functioning is in my view, is a bit silly, because it's clear that there's no purpose. So to say our function is to procreate, I don't agree with that. There's just functioning, which has no purpose. But are we the mule or its rider? And again, that presupposes that there's some sort of separation. There's the mule and the rider, that there's some kind of governance, direction, orchestration, intention. But if you just observe, there's actually only spontaneous happening. So it couldn't possibly have any kind of orchestration. There's no purpose, there's no intention. It's just spontaneous happening. And there's no one separate from it to observe it or to be outside. There's no possibility of being outside of it. It's just spontaneous happening. Okay. Sorry if that was a lot, that one. So, next one. Would you be able to say a few quick things on the collapsing of the idea of being at a distance to what's happening? This idea that somehow there's life and then the knowing of life as a witness or disembodied consciousness or whatever. It just seems to be so brittle a feeling, and yet it's pretty persuasive and persistent a notion, idea, seeming, experience. Right. So this is it's true. It does seem to be fairly, well, no, you didn't say. I'd say it's pervasive, but persuasive, not necessarily. It's pervasive. It does seem to be very common for there to be a belief that there is separation. But what's interesting, that you say it's persuasive, but actually it's not, because there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that there is any separation or distance. It's only a concept. So the concept is fine. I mean, the concept exists. It's the same as a mirage exists. But the mirage is only a mirage. It's just a mirage. It's not water. It's just a mirage. So as long as you believe that the mirage is something other than what it is, then you can come up with all kinds of theories about why that water is always over there. No matter how hard you try to get to it, it's always over there. It just keeps moving. So the thing to do, though, is to just give up on the ideas instead of beginning with the idea about what is. Instead of having a framework and a bunch of presumptions, let all of that go, and then just notice what actually is. And there's no end to that. So it's not about arriving at an understanding. It's not that you have to get to some kind of finality where reality is collapsed, where the separation is collapsed. It's like you don't have to get rid of the mirage, because the mirage was never a problem. There's only the belief that the mirage was something other than what it is. So the same as whatever it is that is imagined to be separation or evidence of separation, it's not a problem. Couldn't possibly be a problem. It's just the belief that it means something other than what it is. So you can't know what it is. Same as you can't know what a mirage is. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of theories, but you don't know what the mirage is in truth. I mean, you can say, oh, it has to do with the light and the atmosphere and bending, but you don't know what it is in truth. It's a mirage, which is a mystery. Same with everything. Everything, all is a mystery. It's a mystery that cannot be understood or solved. It doesn't need to be solved. What was the question? On the collapsing of the idea of being at a distance, right? So the shortcut is just stop. So the idea that it's like if you're trying to solve the mirage if solving the mirage means getting rid of the mirage, good luck with that, right? I mean, you don't control it. You're not in charge of the mirage. So if you believe that the collapsing of the belief in the distance or separation requires the absence of whatever the phenomenon is that you have interpreted or that has been interpreted to mean that there's separation or distance, then you're not in charge of that. So the shortcut is give it up. Whatever is. It doesn't need to be any different. And it's not proof of anything. It never was. It never could be. So that's the easy shortcut. Just stop. Anytime that an objection or a doubt arises, anytime there's any sense that there's a problem that needs to be solved or a mystery that needs to be resolved or understood, it's all that is. If you want to ascribe some meaning to it, then then just ascribe this meaning to it. It's just a sign to give it up. Stop. Always just stop. Just let it go. That's freedom. Next question. In Peace Feels Like This, you say clearly that there is nothing, that nothing is hidden, and this is it. Right. Good. I'm glad that that was heard. I like that, but I am also drawn to resonate with a quote from Eckhart Tolle. And the quote is, "Beyond the beauty of the external forms, there is more here, something that cannot be named, something ineffable, some deep inner holy essence. It only reveals itself when you are present." That sounds nice to me. So that was the end of the quote. That sounds nice to me too. Though on the face of it, it seems to directly contradict your statement that there is nothing hidden. So my question is this: is your stance different from his? Or perhaps they are just two different ways of expressing the same thing? There's more to it, but that's the essence of it. Okay, so obviously different people, different personalities, different expressions. Whether or not it's the same thing, never know. And the good news is that it doesn't matter. Obviously, Eckhart likes to use more flowery language than I would. It's nice. It sounds nice. Beyond the beauty of the external forms. We'll just take a look at it piece by piece. So beyond the beauty of the external forms. So presupposes already that there's an external and an internal, or there's some sort of something other than external forms. So because it's beyond the external forms. So the opportunity is just to see if that's true. Is there beyond? Is there anything that can you find beyond? And then there is more here, something that cannot be named. So more here than what? More than was imagined? I could go along with that, right? Because imagination is always limited, belief is always limited, ideas and concepts are always finite. And yet what's here is totally infinite. So that could be, right? And something that cannot be named, which I'll also agree with, because what is cannot be named. As soon as we name it, then we've tried to reduce it, which is impossible, because as we can see, the actuality of what is totally boundless. Can't be named. It's impossible. Some deep inner holy essence. Flowery language. Not important. It only reveals itself when you are present. Not my way of expressing it. Because there's nobody who's present. There's only present. Which, becomes meaningless because it's all that is. So it's just what is. It's not that there's something called present or presence or someone who could be more present. or achieve more presence. I mean, go ahead and try. But you can't do it because it's meaningless. All that can happen is that experience can seemingly change, which is always happening anyway. But it doesn't mean anything. There's no experience that's more holy or more spiritual or more profane or more important or less important than any other experience. It's all just experiencing. So, I don't know. It's an alright quote. it's not my thing. But I guess the point though is that no matter what the expression, I mean, it's never it. It's just like, I mean, there's a good line in that quote, that something that cannot be named. So if we can name it, if we can speak about it, that's not it. If we can understand it, that's not it. It's only ever a pointing. So whatever words I may use, those words are not truth. Couldn't be truth. Just pointing to what's obvious, which is just what is. Just what you are. No separation. Next question. I'd like to quickly ask you this, only if it's quick. You wrote in Already Awake under wordplay that, can you think without language? I spoke to my workmate about this and she said, what about images? Isn't that thought? Isn't that what happens to a baby before it learns language? And actually, when I did the think of the thought hand, which is an instruction in one of the books, I saw an image of a hand immediately. So do you consider images to be thoughts, or are they labeled as memories? Mind you, in the scheme of the bigger picture, none of these questions about thoughts matter, as you are always pointing to there is only this. Still, I am curious as to your answer. So, it's an interesting point. What I've found is that for most people, it seems that the dominant mode in which people experience or conceive of thoughts is through language, through words. And second to that, usually, is images. It's always a combination of things. It's not limited to that. It can also be sensations and feelings and memories and tastes and smells and sounds, all of it. But what I've found is that most of the time language is dominant and image is a close second or a distant second, depending on the person. And in some people, images are dominant. I've had some people who've written to me and have told me, you're an idiot because I don't think in words, I only think in images. So that's fine. Nonetheless, the point of the exercises is just to demonstrate that all of these that all of it is actually meaningless. That's really the only point, is to see how it is that we attribute meaning to all of it, and we see it as something that needs to be figured out or understood, or it's like a puzzle that needs to be solved. And if we can solve it, then we'll get the prize. And the prize is peace, or the prize is rest. The prize is something good, eternally, hopefully. Or definitely at least some kind of relief or escape, whether that's permanent or temporary, from suffering. And the possibility is to explore and to find out that it's all completely devoid of meaning. Just doesn't mean anything, and doesn't need to be figured out. It doesn't need to be solved. No one needs to do it, and there's nothing to be gained by solving it. In fact, it's an impossibility. There is no end. It's just a vicious cycle. And so in an instant, right now, always right now, it's possible just to stop. Just to let go. To notice that there's the compulsion to try to figure it out, try to understand, try to achieve, try to get somewhere. And just let go. Because it's been seen that there's nothing to be had, nothing to be gotten out of any of it. So next, I have heard you and others talk about life as a sort of movie, a sort of waking dream. And that is happening, and that what is happening is basically meaningless. Can you explain to me why this is? No, I can't explain why anything. There is no why. I know we take things entirely too seriously, yes, but life, my life, your life, life in general is meaningless? Question mark, exclamation point. It is hard to look at people heartbroken over loss or hardship and think this is all meaningless. So, interesting point, because this points to the fact that we often conflate meaning and kindness, maybe, as if it's necessary to have meaning in order to be kind, or love, maybe. We think that love, we conflate love and meaning. Like, that love is about meaning. We have to have meaning in order to love, but actually, love is totally meaningless. We've all had that experience. So it doesn't mean anything. And people have tried to figure it out and they've never succeeded. There's no answer. Love is just mystery. Life is just mystery. It's all mystery. Totally without meaning. So I often say to people, does a sunrise have meaning? Obviously, no, it doesn't. But the fact that the sunrise doesn't have any meaning certainly doesn't detract from the actuality of the sunrise. The fact that love has no meaning does not detract from the actuality of love. The fact that my life, your life, life has no meaning doesn't detract from life or aliveness. Aliving. But just what is. It's totally magnificent, but not in a way that has any meaning, because meaning is always about comparison anyway. If you want to know what something means, you have to compare it to something else. So if you want to know what life means, you have to compare it to something else. Go ahead and find something else. You can't, because there is nothing else. And even to speak of life as a thing is meaningless, right? Because there's no thing to be found. There's no thing called life. Life is boundless. So you can't see it. You're not outside of it. There's no one to be outside of it. There's no one inside it. It's just aliveness. Okay. A few more. If you can truly sense that this is all there is and that everything is ultimately meaningless, then how do you find the motivation to write and record books and even seek reviews? Review my books. That question popped into my mind as I sat down to write a review. I mean, it kind of scares me to think that I might lose all motivation to take care of myself. You know what I mean? So, yes. No. What was the question? Do I know what you mean? Now, let's take a look. So, how do you find the motivation to write and record books and even seek reviews? So, I don't. There's no need to find motivation. I know it's a popular sentiment. We have to find motivation. We're told to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, if you're depressed, You got to do something about that. But you see, the more you try to do, the more you seek motivation, it doesn't work. So, finally, the opportunity is to discover that there's no one to find motivation. There's no motivation to be found. There's only what's happening. So if what's happening, you can just see, look right now. Is what is happening right now separate from motivation? So motivation is purely conceptual. But even if we're going to delve into concept and muck around in concept, is there actually any separation between motivation and what's happening? Motivation is just a concept that we use to try to describe why what is happening is happening. But it can't be separate. Without what's happening, then motivation has no meaning. There's nothing there, which reveals the actual truth about motivation. There is no motivation. There's just what's happening. So there's no finding motivation. No, if I write books, I write books. If I seek reviews, I seek reviews. But there's no motivation. There's no finding the motivation. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. If it happens, it happens. Period. It's really, really simple. Which is one of those things that people, they'll often take that as a concept, a belief, and then when things are going the way that they like, then they say, aha, now I understand, I got it. There's no motivation, it's just happening. I'm really happy that it's just happening. But then when things go the way that they don't want, then they say, oh, well, now there's a problem. I have to solve it. I thought I understood. Now I don't understand. Poor suffering me. I've got to work harder to figure it out so that I don't have to suffer anymore. But really, truly, the invitation is to give up on all of it. Whatever is happening is just what's happening. Sometimes we label it as unpleasant. Sometimes we label it as pleasant. Fine. You don't get to choose it anyway. You don't get to control it. There's no one to choose or control. You can take a look in any moment. Take a look right now. See if there's a chooser. See if there's a controller. See if there's somebody who can seek or find motivation. See if there's a motivator. See if there's a doer. So the fear that you describe, it kind of scares me to think that I might lose all motivation to take care of myself. This comes up a lot. In half the conversations I have with people, this fear comes up. It's very common. If I let go, then what? Then I won't do anything. Then I won't feed myself. I'll just lay around in bed all day. And I say, okay, go ahead and see. See what happens. See if that's true. Because that is that thought or that objection or that doubt. It's just more of the same. It's just more of the attention going to a fantasy analysis of what is instead of just what is. What is doesn't require any understanding or analysis. And it's always been that way anyway. So if the real truth is that if what you call taking care of yourself happens, then it happens. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. There's nobody who can change that. You are not holding the universe together with your beliefs or with your attention or with your tension or with your effort. Nothing needs to be held together. It's already completely fallen apart. It never was together. There's nothing to be held together. There's no thing. There's no sense to be made of it. There's no understanding. It's totally insecure. So there's always this, I think, that fear that can happen is usually about, if we're going to say it's about something, it has that flavor about it of, I've got to protect myself, got to hold it together, got to keep myself safe, got to figure it out, got to get to the destination of fill in the blank, heaven, nirvana, enlightenment, peace. But you just take a look and see, is any of it true? Is there somebody who can do? Is there a reference point? Is there a center? Is there anything hidden? Is there anywhere else to get to? Is there anywhere to be in the first place? So the nature of reality is total insecurity, which feels absolutely terrifying so long as it's imagined that there is someone who is insecure. If I'm insecure, I want security. So you take a look and see, is there someone who's insecure? And then it becomes apparent there's just insecurity. So, what a relief. Just insecurity. Just insecurity isn't so bad. Quite nice. Insecurity for someone, that's a whole other story, but it's not reality. Just a fantasy. Okay, almost done. Is money real? Do we really need money? Is there any way to live life without money, whatever living life actually might mean? Could you live your life, meaning could I live my life without money? What do you seek to get? Why do you seek to get money, either through donations or private sessions or by any other means such as selling your books? Isn't this suffering somehow? Or does money help to prevent suffering? No, money is real in the same way that anything is real. It's also not real in the same way that everything's not real. Because real, what does real mean? It's conceptual, so it's real in that it is a real concept. Do we really need money? Depends what you mean. Do we really need money to breathe? No. Do we really need money to drink water? No. Do we need money for love? No. So depends what you mean. Do we need money for if you wanted to go to Walmart and get some sort of thing at Walmart, you'd probably do best to have some money. Is there any way to live life without money? I mean, obviously so. I've read that today it's estimated that there are modern humans, living in places like somewhere in the Amazon, who remain uncontacted. Good for them, and presumably without money. We don't know. Maybe they've got some Benjamins stored up that they use, but probably not. So, could I live my life without money? I don't know. A lot of these things just become, not. I can't say that I care. I mean, it would maybe be nice in a lot of ways, but that I'm not sure how to answer that one. Why do you seek to get money? And I can answer that in a couple of different ways. I mean, the obvious is because pay the rent and buy food. So that's one answer to it, and the other answer is, like with the motivation, to suggest that there's the implication here is there's someone who is seeking, which just is not true. So there's that. And then, is this suffering, meaning money, or does money help to prevent suffering? And no, obviously money isn't suffering. Money is just money. It's just a concept. That's it. It's not suffering. And does money help to prevent suffering? No. Obviously not. It has nothing to do with suffering. So that's it with the questions that were sent in. I had one more that came up when I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and she had asked a question that was remarkably similar to a question that was asked in the previous episode of Nothing in the Middle, and it basically goes like, see if I can remember what the question was. Right, why are my thoughts about me and my life, basically, right? So this is a question that obviously comes up quite a lot, and it occurred to me that that I could give perhaps a better response to that than I think I did in the previous episode. So why is it that my thoughts are about me and my life? And the possibility is to see that it's only ever it's a self-reinforcing cycle. So you say that some thoughts are about me and my life. Other thoughts are not about me and my life. Already, it's arbitrary. But you can take a look and see, what is the reference point? If you say that some thoughts are about me and my life, how do you know that that's so? How do you know that there's me and my life? And how do you know that some thoughts are about me and my life? There's a reference point that you call me that is presumed to be at the center. So you take a look and see, can you find the reference point? Is there actually anything there? Of course, there's nothing there. There is no reference point. There is no me in my life. So the thoughts that are said to be about me and my life are actually just thoughts, the same as all other thoughts. So as soon as the reference point, which was assumed to be at the center of everything, my experience, my life, my world, always with the reference point at the center of it, when that reference point is seen to be non-existent, then everything is leveled. There is no longer any distance. So that's it for this episode. Keep your questions coming. If you have any other questions, you can send them to me. My email address is joeylott@gmail.com. JOEYLOTT@gmail.com. And I'll see you next time. Bye.